Marie-Louise von Franz was a Swiss psychologist who closely collaborated with Carl Jung from 1933 until his death in 1961. She dedicated much of her work to understanding the deeper meaning behind fairy tales. Like myths, fairy tales contain timeless wisdom that teaches us about the human condition. Jung believed so much insight was embedded in these stories that he once told von Franz, "When you study fairy tales, you can study the anatomy of man." Over the years, von Franz analyzed tales from cultures spanning the globe and across history. And she came to a fascinating conclusion. Every fairy tale carries lessons. Yet for almost every message, there is often a contradictory one in another tale. She called this phenomenon the rule of contradiction. She explained, "I can tell you stories that say if you meet evil, you must fight it. But there are just as many that say you must run away and avoid confrontation. Some say suffer quietly. Others insist on striking back. Some advocate lying to survive. Others say be honest, even toward the devil, and avoid deceit. For all of these, examples abounded is always a yes and a no, equally valid in different stories." At first, von Franz was disappointed. She had hoped to find timeless, indisputable lessons. But after deeper reflection, she realized the rule of contradiction makes perfect sense. Life presents countless challenges and dilemmas. There is no single path that is right for everyone. When faced with ethical choices, it is precisely in navigating these contradictory lessons that we become individuals. As she puts it, if collective material in fairy tales is completely contradictory, if our basic ethical disposition is contradictory, only then can we build an individual, responsible, and free conscious structure over these opposites. We may recognize what could be right in human nature, but ultimately choose a third path, our own individuality. Without such contradictions, individuality would not exist. This realization was my comfort after discovering the challenging truth of contradictory structure. Yet, there is one exception to the rule of contradiction. One lesson never contradicted across all fairy tales: never harm the helpful animal. This rule, as von Franz tells us, is universal. In practical terms, the helpful animal represents our inner voice, the intuitive conscience guiding us toward right action and away from wrong. Obedience to one's instinctual inner being, she notes, is more essential than anything else. Across all nations and fairy tales, this message is consistent in these stories. The helpful animal symbolizes man's conscience, as Jung explains. The word conscience itself comes from a form of knowledge, a certainty about the emotional, the value of our motives. When faced with moral dilemmas or life decisions, our conscience often manifests as strong emotions or gut feelings. Sometimes these feelings warn us against an action. Other times, they encourage us to act. Jung noted that many cultures view conscience as an expression of God's will, reflecting its powerful role in guiding human behavior. Obeying conscience is easy when it aligns with social norms, family expectations, or peer pressures. But when it conflicts with them, dilemmas arise. Do we follow our conscience or conform? Jung observes, conscience regardless of its basis commands the individual to obey their inner voice, even at the risk of error. We may attempt to follow societal moral codes instead, but this brings an uneasy feeling of disloyalty. Most people fear going against social norms, and when faced with the choice to obey conscience or conform, they often choose conformity. Denying one's inner voice, however, leaves a lingering sense of living a lie. Jung explains, Observing customs and laws can cloak a subtle lie undetectable to others. We may even deceive ourselves into believing we are righteous. Yet deep down, a voice whispers, something is not right, regardless of public opinion or moral codes. By ignoring the guidance of conscience, we violate the one universal rule von Franz identified. Fyodor Dostoevsky emphasized that our conscience defines our humanity. Prolonged disobedience leads to guilt, regret, shame, and an internal sickness of the self. Joseph Frank explains in Dostoevsky the seeds of revolt that conscience acts as a natural regulator of the psyche. Its perversion results in a literal internal affliction, a major theme in Dostoevsky's works. Those who follow their conscience develop individuality, but Jung warns of a false conscience alongside the true one. The wrong conscience exaggerates, perverts, or twists moral values, acting compulsively and creating emotional consequences similar to the true conscience. Demons, Jung notes, can masquerade as helpful guides, steering us down destructive paths. Beside the positive, right conscience stands the negative, or false conscience, often called the devil, seducer, tempter, or evil spirit. To avoid being misled, Jung advises slowing down during moral dilemmas. Compulsive urges often indicate guidance from a false conscience. As Jung famously said, all haste is of the devil. Von Franz observes, if one stews long enough in the agonies of such a conflict, an inner line becomes clear, providing enough certainty to continue, even at the risk of error. By taking time to reflect, we connect with our true conscience. Even with careful reflection, certainty about right action is never guaranteed. Moving forward requires a leap of faith, trusting that our true conscience guides us. Jung notes, it is difficult to pinpoint where the right conscience ends and the false begins. But if conscience is the voice of God, it possesses authority far beyond traditional morality. Anyone granting it this status should trust divine guidance and follow conscience rather than conventional norms. Following conscience may incur social risks. One might face alienation or ostracism. Lawrence van der Post, influenced by Jung, explains in A Far-Off Place that each person has an inherent contract with life. While social contracts matter, the personal contract with life is paramount. Suppressing this contract creates unrest, but honoring it brings profound peace. Von Franz and Jung both emphasize that recognizing and heeding the inner voice of conscience is essential to authentic living. In this journey of understanding, the oracle's Sanctum explores how fairy tales, Jungian insights, and von Franz research guide us toward ethical living, moral clarity, and connection with our deepest inner selves. Conscience, like the helpful animal in every story, directs, warns, and protects. Ignoring it leads to suffering. Embracing it fosters individuality, integrity, and a life in harmony with one's true nature. Continuing the exploration of conscience and the helpful animal, it is essential to recognize the ways in which inner guidance manifests in ordinary life. Often, the signals are subtler feeling of discomfort, hesitation, or an uneasy gut reaction. Other times, they are more pronounced, a sudden clarity or insight that demands attention. Fairy tales encode these experiences metaphorically. The helpful animal may warn the protagonist of danger, point toward hidden treasures, or guide them through moral tests. In human terms, these are the moments when conscience reveals the correct course of action, sometimes contrary to logic, social expectation, or personal desire. The challenge lies in differentiating between true conscience and its deceptive counterpart. Jung emphasized that false conscience is cunning, persuasive, and emotionally compelling. It masquerades as morality, duty, or righteousness, but ultimately diverts individuals from authentic growth. In literary terms, this is often represented by trickster characters, malevolent spirits, or corrupt advisors entities that appear helpful but whose guidance leads to harm. Von Franz notes that the helpful animal, by contrast, never deceives, never betrays, and serves consistently as a moral anchor. This distinction underscores the importance of discernment, learning to recognize genuine guidance versus misleading impulses is crucial for ethical development and psychological well-being. Jung and von Franz both advocate for deliberate reflection. When confronting moral dilemmas, the human psyche is complex, and immediate action without contemplation often leads to missteps. Fairy tales illustrate this principle repeatedly. Protagonists who rush into action without heed often face setbacks, whereas those who pause, consider, and consult inner guidance succeed in resolving conflicts and achieving goals. Von Franz refers to this as stewing in the tension of conflict, allowing the unconscious mind to reveal the proper path. By engaging with the problem thoughtfully, individuals cultivate moral intuition, patience, and resilience. The notion of ethical ambiguity is also central to understanding conscience. Fairy tales rarely present absolute moral certainties. One story may advocate confrontation with evil, another caution against it. One may promote honesty even in dire circumstances, while another emphasizes strategic deception. This rule of contradiction, as von Franz calls it, highlights the necessity of personal discernment. Life is rarely black and white, and moral choices are nuanced. By confronting contradictions and analyzing the guidance of the helpful animal, individuals learn to navigate ethical gray zones, exercising judgment, empathy, and moral courage. Societal expectations often conflict with personal conscience. Jung observed that individuals are frequently socialized to prioritize conformity, obedience, and public approval over internal guidance. While social rules and moral codes are valuable for communal cohesion, they are not infallible. Blind adherence can stifle individuality, suppress authenticity, and lead to internal conflict. Von Franz and Jung both stress that true ethical development requires balancing social responsibility with loyalty to one's inner voice. The helpful animal symbolizes this delicate equilibrium. It encourages ethical action aligned with conscience, even when it diverges from societal norms. Historical and literary examples reinforce this principle. Dostoevsky's characters frequently face moral dilemmas where societal rules and personal conscience clash. Those who ignore their inner guidance suffer psychological torment, alienation, and moral disintegration. Conversely, characters who act in accordance with their true conscience, even at personal risk, experience a profound sense of integrity and alignment with life's deeper purpose. Fairy tales operate similarly. The hero who heeds the helpful animal often encounters trials, yet ultimately achieves growth, wisdom, and fulfillment. The practical applications of these insights extend into daily life. Ethical decision-making involves listening to subtle cues, analyzing potential consequences, and cultivating moral awareness. Ignoring conscience can lead to regret, relational conflict, and a persistent feeling of disconnection. In contrast, nurturing the inner voice fosters resilience, clarity, and a sense of purpose. The helpful animal's guidance, though symbolic, offers a framework for engaging with these challenges consciously, intentionally, and authentically. Von Franz also highlights that ethical development is intertwined with the cultivation of individuality. The rule of contradiction ensures that moral lessons are never absolute, compelling individuals to think critically, evaluate options, and assert their own judgment. By navigating these contradictions, a person establishes a unique moral identity. The helpful animal provides support, not answers. It encourages exploration, reflection, and ethical discernment. In this way, fairy tales serve as both mirrors and maps, reflecting the complexity of human experience and guiding the path toward authentic moral development. Jung underscores the divine or transcendent dimension of conscience. He asserts that the voice of true conscience possesses authority beyond conventional morality, often described as the voice of God. Obedience to this voice requires courage, trust, and faith, particularly when it contradicts external expectations. Von Franz emphasizes that this obedience is central to psychological health. Ignoring the inner voice creates dissonance, anxiety, and inner conflict, whereas honoring it fosters coherence, moral clarity, and self-respect. The concept of the inner contract with life, as articulated by Lawrence van der Post, complements this understanding. Each individual possesses a unique agreement with existence, a commitment to authenticity, growth, and ethical integrity. This contract is deeply personal and supersedes social contracts, rules, or norms. Violating it leads to profound inner unrest, whereas honoring it aligns individuals with life's flow, fostering fulfillment and resilience. The helpful animal, symbolizing the conscience, serves as a guide in maintaining fidelity to this personal contract, ensuring that decisions reflect genuine moral insight rather than external compulsion. Emotional intelligence also plays a crucial role in following conscience. The helpful animal often communicates through subtle, effective cues: unease, excitement, intuition, or a sense of rightness. Learning to interpret these signals requires self-awareness, mindfulness, and emotional literacy. Recognizing the difference between fear, desire, and authentic moral guidance allows individuals to make decisions that honor both their inner voice and practical realities. Jung and von Franz suggest that this attunement is a lifelong process, developing through reflection, experience, and conscious engagement with moral complexity. The consequences of ignoring the helpful animal are severe. Individuals who suppress or disregard their conscience often experience guilt, shame, and psychological fragmentation. Dostoevsky illustrates this vividly. Characters who betray their internal moral compass descend into self-alienation, moral confusion, and existential despair. Fairy tales echo this message. The protagonist who ignores the helpful animal frequently suffers setbacks, moral compromise, or peril. By contrast, those who heed guidance, even in uncertainty, cultivate moral authority, inner peace, and the capacity for ethical creativity. The study of conscience, as reflected in both psychological theory and fairy tales, offers a roadmap for ethical living. By observing inner signals, reflecting on moral dilemmas, and discerning between true and false guidance, individuals cultivate moral wisdom. The helpful animal embodies the principles of attentiveness, patience, and integrity, offering a model for how to navigate the complexities of life. Von Franz and Jung's insights illuminate the enduring relevance of these symbolic lessons, showing that ancient narratives continue to inform modern ethical practice. In contemporary life, the symbolic guidance of the helpful animal translates into practical action, listening to intuition, respecting emotional responses, reflecting on moral consequences, and making choices aligned with core values. These practices strengthen ethical discernment, enhance personal responsibility, and promote psychological well-being. By consistently consulting this inner guide, individuals develop a refined moral compass capable of navigating the ambiguities, contradictions, and challenges inherent in human existence. Ultimately, the journey of conscience is one of self-discovery, moral engagement, and alignment with life's deeper principles. The helpful animal, present in fairy tales across cultures and eras, reminds us that guidance, clarity, and wisdom reside within. By honoring this inner voice, individuals cultivate integrity, resilience, and authenticity. The oracle's Sanctum emphasizes that engaging with these principles is not a passive endeavor. It requires courage, reflection, and dedication to living in accordance with conscience, through attentive observation, patient reflection, and commitment to authenticity. Individuals can navigate ethical complexity with confidence. Fairy tales, psychological theory, and literary examples converge to illustrate that the voice of conscience, symbolized by the helpful animal, is the most reliable guide for moral action. By integrating this guidance into daily life, individuals achieve not only ethical coherence but also psychological and spiritual fulfillment. The lessons encoded in stories, validated by Jung and Franz, remain as relevant today as they were when first told, offering enduring wisdom for those who seek to live consciously, ethically, and fully. As we continue exploring the significance of the helpful animal and conscience, it becomes evident that fairy tales provide more than mere entertainment. They serve as mirrors to the human psyche. Marie-Louise von Franz emphasized that these narratives encode lessons on morality, choice, and the complexity of ethical living. She noticed that while the rule of contradiction appears in nearly all aspects of fairy tales, the helpful animal consistently appears as a symbol of inner guidance. This animal, unlike any other character, never misleads, never causes harm, and always serves as a trusted guide. In essence, it represents the deepest truths of our conscience, the voice that points us toward authenticity. Jung elaborated on this by explaining that the voice of conscience operates independently of societal expectations. Many people confuse morality with mere conformity, following rules, pleasing others, or adhering to social norms. However, true conscience often conflicts with these external expectations. It is not the same as guilt imposed by society, nor is it a feeling of obligation shaped by cultural standards. Conscience is a profound internal compass, sometimes subtle, sometimes intensely felt, that directs individuals toward actions aligned with their core being. The helpful animal in fairy tales embodies this compass in a symbolic, visual form, making it accessible and relatable across generations and cultures. Obeying the voice of conscience is not always easy. It may lead to social friction, disapproval, or even personal danger. Yet, von Franz and Jung both stress that ignoring it leads to far more significant suffering. Fyodor Dostoevsky, whom Jung greatly admired, explored the consequences of ignoring conscience in his literature. Characters who betray their inner moral guidance often experience profound psychological torment, guilt, and alienation from themselves. Joseph Frank describes this as a literal sickness of the self, in which denying one's internal guidance causes mental, emotional, and sometimes physical harm. The human psyche, Frank asserts, is naturally attuned to recognize right action, and deviation from it triggers internal resistance and unrest. False conscience complicates matters further. Jung warned that alongside the true conscience exists a deceptive version that can mislead, distort reality, and manipulate emotions. This false conscience can present itself as morality, duty, or divine will, but ultimately guides the individual away from their authentic path. In fairy tales, the contrast between the helpful animal and deceptive forces mirrors this struggle between true and false conscience. The hero must discern which voice to trust, reflecting the real-life necessity of introspection and careful judgment. When people fail to recognize the difference, they may follow impulses that seem righteous, but are ultimately self-destructive. The process of recognizing true conscience involves deliberate reflection, patience, and emotional honesty. Hasty decisions, impulsive actions, or following the crowd are often indications of false guidance. Jung's famous phrase, "All haste is of the devil," underscores the importance of slowing down when making moral choices. By giving the unconscious mind time to process a dilemma, an individual may notice subtle signs, intuitive nudges, or feelings of unease that reveal the correct course. Von Franz observes that dwelling in the tension of a moral dilemma allows for the emergence of clarity, enabling an individual to act with conviction, even if it means risk or potential error. The metaphor of the helpful animal extends beyond mere symbolism. It encourages us to pay attention to instinctual wisdom, intuition, and the subtle emotional cues that guide decision-making. By cultivating awareness of these internal signals, we strengthen the connection between conscious thought and deeper instinct, enabling more authentic and ethical action. The animal serves as a bridge between the unconscious and conscious mind, reminding us that the answers we seek are often already within us. Societal pressure often challenges the authority of the inner voice. Conforming to group norms, adhering to family expectations, or succumbing to cultural standards can silence conscience. Jung explains that individuals frequently experience internal conflict when these pressures oppose their inner guidance. The psychological discomfort that arises from such conflict is universal, reflecting the innate tension between personal authenticity and social conformity. Von Franz and Jung suggest that this tension is essential for human development. It forces individuals to make conscious choices, cultivate discernment, and assert their unique moral perspective. Lawrence van der Post, inspired by Jung, provides an illuminating perspective on this struggle in a far-off place. He posits that each person has a special, inborn contract with life, a unique agreement between themselves and existence itself. While social contracts with family, community, or nation hold importance, the personal contract with life is supreme. Violating this contract by ignoring conscience leads to profound inner turmoil, a sense of incompleteness, and an inability to experience true peace. Following the inner voice may provoke conflict with external authority or social expectation, yet the long-term rewards of authenticity far outweigh temporary discomfort. Von Franz also highlights that the development of individuality hinges on confronting contradictory moral lessons. Fairy tales often present multiple ways to navigate challenges, with no single answer universally correct. This mirrors the complexity of real-life ethical dilemmas, where rigid rules or fixed principles cannot encompass every scenario. By evaluating options, weighing consequences, and reflecting on inner signals, individuals exercise their moral autonomy. The helpful animal becomes a trusted ally, guiding them through uncertainty while ensuring that choices remain grounded in authenticity and conscience. The practical implications of heeding the voice of conscience are profound. In everyday life, it manifests in decisions about honesty, compassion, personal responsibility, and alignment with core values. Ignoring these signals often leads to regret, strained relationships, and a persistent feeling of disconnection from oneself. Conversely, following conscience fosters resilience, integrity, and a sense of purpose. As Jung emphasizes, conscience is a higher authority than conventional morality. It commands allegiance to one's deeper being, even when social norms disagree. The challenge is to trust this authority despite uncertainty, hesitation, or fear of judgment. In examining historical and literary examples, the importance of conscience becomes even clearer. Dostoevsky's protagonists illustrate the consequences of ignoring internal moral guidance, while fairy tales across cultures consistently demonstrate the rewards of protecting and heeding the helpful animal. The recurring theme underscores the universality of conscience as a guiding force, transcending culture, time, and circumstance. The allegory of the helpful animal is a tool for teaching discernment, promoting ethical behavior, and nurturing the development of individual moral reasoning. For viewers of the oracle's Sanctum, these insights offer more than theoretical knowledge. They provide actionable guidance. Recognizing the signals of conscience requires attentiveness, reflection, and a willingness to pause before acting. It demands courage to resist external pressures and to honor one's internal contract with life. The helpful animal, a symbol present in all enduring tales, reminds us that such vigilance is not optional. It is essential for a life of integrity, authenticity, and psychological well-being. Through fairy tales, von Franz and Jung revealed that life's challenges are rarely straightforward. Every decision carries moral complexity, every action has potential consequences, and the guidance of the inner voice is crucial in navigating this complexity. The helpful animal is a beacon, an ever-present reminder that the answers we seek are already within us. By cultivating awareness, exercising discernment, and heeding these internal cues, individuals develop the capacity for ethical judgment, personal responsibility, and the pursuit of true individuality. The journey of understanding conscience, reflected in fairy tales and human experience, is continuous. Mistakes, false starts, and misinterpretations are inevitable. Yet each encounter with the voice of conscience strengthens moral and psychological resilience. Following this inner guidance, even amidst uncertainty, enables growth, wisdom, and alignment with one's unique path. The oracle's Sanctum invites viewers to recognize, honor, and protect this inner compass, understanding that it is the cornerstone of authentic living, psychological health, and ethical integrity.